Variation theory brings together a couple of different things we've been looking at within the department over the last few years. One was why we got into maths as maths teachers. So when we had the new curriculum for Key Stage 3, we got together as maths teachers. What made us go into maths in the first place? What made us think maths was our subject? And we came up with the idea of just patterns. Patterns are what underlies everything in maths. And there's a quote I love about this. I asked people, what do you understand by maths? They said manipulation of numbers. If I'd said, what do you understand by music, would you have said the manipulation of notes? Music isn't just playing one note, then another note, then another note. It all comes together to make one big picture, to make music. Maths isn't just doing one sum, then another sum, then another sum. It's about the way they come together to make a big picture and spot the patterns. So you wanted them to get thinking about spotting patterns. We also want to increase their level of thinking skills within maths. And then reading around the pedagogy, those two things came together in variation theory. When students are doing variation theory, it can look as if they're doing a sequence of mundane questions, like one note followed by another note followed by another note, but they're not just doing that, they're not just developing their fluency, they're developing their mathematical understanding, seeing the structures and developing their logical reasoning.
So variation theory is very much embedded in our department. We've got to the point where we don't even realise that we're doing it. When we're doing examples for students at the start of a lesson or at the start of a topic, we naturally just change one element of our example. And so we're trying to reduce their cognitive load really when they're learning the new topic. And so it's very embedded. We do it for examples, we then do it when we're creating worksheets, we do it when we're going through solutions and things like that, and it's become just part of an ordinary lesson for us now.
Throughout this lesson, you will need to be spotting what has changed and thinking about how that actually changes your answer. Don't want to give away too much yet. So you will get a worksheet that is going to start like this. So for now, on your whiteboard, just quickly, what calculation do you actually do and what is your answer to that question?
So in today's lesson, we did volume and we're looking at volume of cuboids. The idea of the variation theory here wasn't looking at whether students can answer volume of cuboid questions. I wanted them to think about if I change an element of the question, so say the length is now 10 times bigger of this cuboid, how does that impact the answer? And the idea that I wanted them to think about was how volume is the space inside a shape. So if I change a length of the cuboid, how that actually changes the amount of space inside of the shape. So it's trying to get the students to think about how the question has changed and how that impacts the answer with the topic being volume. So realising that if a shape is 4 times wider, 4 times deeper and 4 times taller, then actually their volume has been multiplied by 4, by 4 and by 4 again. So then volume is actually multiplied by 4 cubed, and trying to get them to realise that it's a 3-dimensional thing and the impact of side length changes the final solution.
Okay, and hold it up. Right, I can see lots of calculations going on. The main thing that I can see on most people's boards is you have multiplied each side length together to give you 120 centimetres cubed. Good, okay, so that's your starting point. Now, for this next question, on your whiteboards, I want you to write what has changed and what your predicted answer will be for this question. So you can write it as a sentence and then just your predicted answer. I don't want you to actually work it out. Lots of people have written similar to this actually. So we have height has been halved. On this one as well, the height of the cube is divided by 2. Same thing, both correct, just different ways of saying it. And you have both therefore thought, well, if the height is half, then it's kind of like chopping this cuboid in 2, and therefore surely your volume would be half as well. So predicted answers I saw mostly 60 centimetres cubed. For each question then, you need to be looking at the question, see what's changed. If you've got a highlighter or a green pen, maybe actually circle the bit that's changed. I want in a sentence for you to write what has changed. Once you have predicted your answer, you then have a calculator if you need it. In the final column, so here, I want to see you actually working out the question to see if your prediction was correct. So don't worry, if your prediction ends up being incorrect, that's fine. It was a prediction, And later on, we'll talk about maybe why you thought that prediction might have been right and then why it ended up wrong.
I figured out that 16 is 4 times 4, 24 is 6 times 4, and 100 is 25 times 4. So like I did 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64 centimeters. So then I multiplied 600 by 64, and that gave me 38,400 centimeter cubed. And then I checked it, and it turns out I was right.
So I worked out from 76,800 that because these 3 units have all been divided by 10, together they've divided the total by 1,000, because 10 times 10 times 10. And so what I needed to work out was 76,800 divided by 1,000, which I worked out 76.8.
Right, question 4 to 5. Viham.
All the values were multiplied by 4.
So they've all been multiplied by 4. So it's 4 times taller, 4 times wider, 4 times in depth. What was your prediction for that then?
I didn't write a unit prediction, I just wrote 600 centimeters cubed times 4 to the power of 3.
4 to the power of 3. Why 4 to the power of 3?
Because each and every value was multiplied by 4.
Okay, so what Vihan's done, he's taken his previous answer of, it was 600, wasn't it? And you said you times it by 4 cubed, correct? Right, the 4 cubed has come from, as Vihan said, we've times every side length by 4. If we've times every side length by 4, what have we actually done?
Times 64.
Times it by 64, which is what type of number?
Cube.
Cube number, okay? So you were absolutely correct. It is times by 4 cubed, and it's because we've actually times by 4 in 3 dimensions, okay? We've got our 3 different lengths times by 4. So if you did correctly predict that, well done. The number part, just focusing on the number, they've all been divided by 100. So you could assume your answer is divided by 100, but actually, looking at the number part, when you're converting, you've divided by 100, divided by 100, and divided by 100 again, so we've actually divided by 100 cubed. So your answer ends up looking like it's a very small answer as 7.68 metres cubed. But has the size of the cube changed? No, we've just measured it differently. The size of the cube, the amount of space inside of that, remains the same. What's changed between 10 to 11? Kane, whether you got onto this or not, I think you can spot it.
The width has been times by 100.
Has it been times by 100? Check your units.
Has it?
Check your units, that's metres.
Metres. Oh, it's just been changed to the centimetres.
Yeah, we've just changed the units for that. So 200 centimetres is equivalent to what in metres?
2 metres.
2 metres. So what's actually changed?
Nothing really.
Nothing really. So what could our prediction be?
The exact same.
Exact same.
With our resources for variation theory, we use online websites to help inspire us really, and we take elements of what's on there and then adapt it to actually make it suit our class and the level that we're teaching. It could also be that the idea of the variation theory comes from, for a particular topic, comes from the website, but we might want to adapt it to focus on a certain thing. So we've used, for example, for order of operations, there is variation theory worksheet already available, but I wanted to focus just on the addition of brackets in the equations. So the idea came from the website, but then I've adapted it to give a sequence of questions that only actually look at changing the bracket element of it.
We use variation theory in 3 different ways at various different types in the learning cycle. The first way is when they're learning a new method, and that is based on spotting patterns to realise what a mathematical rule will be. We use that a lot for negative numbers, 3 minus 2, 3 minus 1, 3 minus 0, 3 minus minus 1, 3 minus minus 2, to get where the double minus comes from. Here's an example where we ask students to write down 2 to the power 4, 2 to the power 3, 2 to the power 1, 2 to the power 0, and then spot the connections divided by 2 each time and extend the pattern to say what 2 to the power 0 would be and 2 with negative powers. So they developed the rule for themselves rather than just being told it by me. Here's a second example where students are discovering mathematics themselves by following patterns. This was when students knew how to substitute into formulas. We used that to develop sequences. So given a formula, substitute 1, 2, 3, 4 to work out what the sequence is. And then the important part was then to relate that to a times table. All start with 2s, all start with 3s, all start with 5s, so they could spot the connections there. And by the time they'd done that, they could then go to the ones at the end where they were given the sequence, and they could say what the formula was without having been taught explicitly how to do it. So they were teaching themselves basically nth term without me telling them how to do nth term. Second type of question is where we use minimally different questions to focus pupils' attention on the important part within the question. So here we've got questions on ratios. They go in 3s. Within each 3, it's the same 2 people, the same same ratio, the same amount of money, but that £60 is a different part within each question. They have to read the question carefully to see which part it is. So because there's only one thing changing each time, the numbers are the same, the names are the same, the ratios are the same, they're focusing on the bit that's changing every time, and that's the important part. And that means we are teaching all 3 methods at once, so right from the beginning, they're used to doing 3 different types of ratios. The third type we use is we want students to become fluent in a skill. They're already reasonably good at it, they need some more practice, but rather than just giving a sequence of unrelated questions, we make it more interesting for them. So here is something I did with Year 7s in the first couple of weeks. It was double-digit multiplication. The first question was 36 times 34. The next one was 35 times 35. And they always go in pairs. The next pair was 49 times 47, then 48 times 48. 73 times 75, and then I asked them, can you guess what the part B for that one is going to be? And can you see the connections between the answers to guess what the answer to that one is going to be? So they're having to do 2-digit multiplication, but it's not as boring as it could be, just a page of 2-digit multiplication. It's forcing them to think about what it means as well and to spot patterns.